So, what is music theory and why do we need to study it? If you want to be a musician or you want to learn any instrument, it's kind of like learning the language around music, and with that you can really improve so much quicker. So I'm not saying you absolutely have to learn theory to be a great musician. So you've got amazing musicians like Paul McCartney and people like that who actually can't read or write music. If you can read the music, then you can actually really train your ear to a pretty advanced level where you can pick up chords, learn melodies so much quicker. And you should be able to get to a point where you can just look at a piece of music and be able to hear the music in your head, understand where the notes are going, and see the chord progressions on the page. So let's go for it. I'm going to start off with looking at the stave and where that came from. Okay, let's break this down. The way we know which notes we need to play on the stave is with the 5 lines. They were originally based on the 5 fingers of the guy who came up with the idea, called Guido of Arezzo. Let's quickly learn how to draw it. So the treble clef is also known as the G clef, starts on the G line. The bass clef starts on the F below middle C. The clefs don't actually represent the right hand and the left hand, technically. Some people think, oh, bass clef must mean you play it with the left hand if you're a pianist, but it doesn't actually mean that, because you can have both hands in the bass clef or both hands in the treble clef. And also don't forget that all instruments use the treble and the bass, so it's not just for pianists. So how can you tell which notes that you need to play? You need to look at the lines and the spaces. Each line represents a different name of a note. So the lines in the treble clef are E, G, B, D, F. And you can use a little saying to help you remember this. So you can do, every good boy deserves food, which is a little bit odd of a twist for my liking. The spaces spell out face, F-A-C-E, space is face, that's a good way to remember it. And then going to the bass clef, you have green buses drive fast always. I've got a little picture of a bus there. And the spaces, we've got A, C, E, G. So all cows eat grass. I was gonna draw a cow, but my illustration skills don't quite cut it, so I'm gonna stick to music. Just under the bottom line in the treble clef is a D, and if you want to go any lower than that, we need to add some extra lines, and those are called ledger lines. So we use them to be able to read notes higher or lower than on the staff. The middle C kind of acts like a barrier between the treble clef and the bass clef. So let's talk about the sharps and the flats. So you see a lot of these symbols everywhere, it's not a hashtag. And basically, if you have a sharp, it means that you get the note that you're playing and you put it up 1 semitone. So in the last video I mentioned that a semitone is 1 step and a tone is 2 steps. So when I say a step, it's literally the next door note on a piano or a guitar or whatever instrument you've got. So a G, if you put it up 1 semitone, that turns it into a G sharp, and if you take it down 1 semitone, then it becomes a G flat. So if you want to get rid of a sharp, all you need is a natural sign, and that will kind of erase the sharp, that will get rid of it. So if you've had a G sharp, and then you put a natural in front of it, then that will become a G natural, just a normal G. So I'm not going to get too far into key signatures here because it's a pretty huge topic and probably requires its own video. But basically, just in a nutshell, every note has a scale attached to it. So if we have a C, you have C major, which would be like C, D, E, F, G, etc. up the scale. So if you have the minor one, it's kind of a sad sounding version. And you change that third note of the scale down 1 semitone from the major to the minor. Okay, every major key has a related minor key, so this is called the relative minor. Imagine like a pair of twins, and one's a happy twin and one's a sad twin. So the way that you find a relative minor is going down 3 semitones, not including the original tone. So we're in C, so if we go down 3 semitones, it's B, A sharp, and then A. And so that is the relative minor. So what that means is they have the same key signature, so they have the same sharps and flats at the beginning of the piece. So C major has no sharps and flats, and A minor has no sharps and flats as well. But, here's the big but. I like big buts, right? Here's the big but. You have to raise the 7th note in a minor scale. So if you have A minor, there's nothing in the key signature, but you raise up the 7th note, so you kind of have that sound to it. There are 2 types of minor scales. The harmonic, where you just raise the 7th going up and down, and the melodic, where you raise the 6th note and the 7th note going up, and on the way down you lower them back down again. So with the harmonic, it stays raised, the 7th stays raised, going up and going down. With the melodic, the 6th note and the 7th note get raised, and then on the way down, you lower them back down again. that's a brief recap of major keys and minor keys and relative minors. So another very important thing is, how long do you hold the notes on for? Basically, we now have these symbols, so we have a 4-beat note, 3-beat note, 2-beat note, etc, etc, and these are what they are. Each of them has a fancy name if you use it in the UK, so semi-breve, quaver, all of that kind of stuff. If you're in America, they're a little bit more practical, whole note, half note, quarter note, etc. So as well as knowing how long to hold on a note for, you also need to know how long to not play a note. So these are called rests, and there's different symbols to correlate to each note value. So if you have a little blob underneath the line, that's 4-beat rest. And if it's a blob over the line, then that's a 2-beat rest. The way I teach that is actually to say, imagine a piece of gum, and if you have the gum on top of the piano, then it's a lot easier to find, so on top of the line, and so it takes 2 beats to find it. And if you have the blob underneath the piano, that takes 4 beats to find it, so that's the 4-beat rest. The crotchet rest, which is 1 beat, that kind of looks like a Harry Potter scar, and then you got the quaver, the little squiggly thing, and the semi-quaver rest just has another little extra arm coming out of it. At the beginning of any piece, you'll see 2 numbers, and the top number basically means how many counts there are in a bar. The bottom number refers to the type of count it is. So the bottom number, if it's a 4, it means a crotchet or a quarter note. If it's a 2, it's a minim or a half note. And if it's an 8, then it's a quaver or and if it's an 8, then it's a quaver or an 8th note in the States. When you do count in quavers, then you group them into groups of 3. So if you have 6 quavers in a bar, so 6, 8, you group them into 2 groups of 3, and then each 3 is worth a dotted crotchet or a dotted quarter note. If you see a kind of swoop in between 2 notes, and it's the same note, then it's holding those notes together. So it's just basic maths really. You get a 2-beat note, for example, then you tie it to another 2-beat note, then you've got a 4-beat note. Hold it on for 4 beats. If you see a dot, then basically that adds half of the original value of the note to the note again. So if you have a crotchet, which is 1 beat, then you put a dot after it, then you add half a crotchet, which is half a beat, or a quaver. So you have a dotted crotchet, which is 1.5 beats. Another thing you need to know is how loud or how quiet you need to play the music, so these are called dynamics. And it goes from very, very quiet, which is pianissimo or PP, and all the way up to FF, which is fortissimo, very loud. There are 2 symbols to show you to get louder and quieter. One is a crescendo, one's a diminuendo, and it kind of looks like it's getting louder, so you're going from a small point and you're opening up to a big sound, or you're going from a big sound and you're going down towards a small point. 2 very important Italian words for you, staccato and legato. You will hear this in your very basic music lessons, so that means smooth playing and detached playing. So if you want a smooth playing, all the notes are kind of joined together, so you got not much of a gap between them. But with staccato, then you're playing it quite bouncy, quite detached. So with the ties, it goes between the same note, but if you see that same kind of symbol going between 2 notes that are different, that's called a slur, and it's kind of connecting it together, so it's like a musical sentence. And that, my friends, is all I'm going to get into for today. I hope that you've enjoyed this breakdown of music theory. This is a huge, huge subject, and there's only so much I can do in one video. So what I'm going to do is break down each grade and go into more detail of each grade as well. I hope this has been useful. I've been James, and next week we're going to be talking about some energy singing warm-up exercises, so do not miss that one. See you next time. And if it's a quaver, then it's a... Next week, we're going to talk about some breathing exercises. No, we're not.